Hi, everybody.
Hi, guys.
I think we're here. I'm Andy, and this is Jennifer.
Jennifer Smith. We're so excited. Valentine's Day, right?
Valentine's Day.
So we wanted to share with you guys today.
So happy Valentine's Day, and may your days be merry and bright. Right? What else do you say on Valentine's Day?
Merry and bright. So
that's kind of a Christmas one, right? May your days be merry. We have lots of things to say with Christmas, but happy Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
For Valentine's Day.
Hi, guys. I can't see who's on, but hi. I have to wear my
I guess
glasses.
we could get a box of those candy hearts, right? And then we would know
Oh,
more what we're supposed to say.
Hi, Maribel. Love
on
you.
Valentine's Day.
Yes, I say love you to my neighbor that's watching. But we're excited. We do have like a gift for you guys that we've worked hard on. That's sure to strengthen your marriage relationship and, probably your other relationships too, because principles can help us no matter whether it's our marriage, our kids, our grouchy neighbors. Not really. Anyway.
We don't have grouchy neighbors.
No, we have awesome neighbors. But anyway, so we have the Valentine's gift for you guys. It's in the link to this video. So please check it out. Accept it as our wonderful, loving gift for you guys. We've been kind of talking about this book right here. I don't know if you can see it. It's The 5 Love Languages. It matches his tie. Purple, right? So the 5 love languages, you may be familiar with it, you may be not. That is a way of how we like to feel loved. And so it's really great if your spouse understands your love language so that you feel more loved, right? And so there's 5 ways that Gary Chapman in his book right here, 5 Love Languages, says we like to feel loved. The first one is receiving gifts, which I kind of like that. Hint, hint. Quality time. And some of us like words of affirmation. I like that too. And then acts of service. And then physical touch, which I think we all need physical touch. The skin is like the largest organ in the body. So it's important to have that physical touch. But anyway, so if you know what your love language is, comment below. And then if you think you know what your spouse's love language is, then comment below too. Say, mine is this and my husband's is probably this. So there, it was receiving gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, or physical touch. So why is it important to have a language between us? Like we were talking about that this morning, right?
It's what you were saying. I mean, we need to know. It's helpful to know. There's a lot of good information that really helps people's relationships, and this is a really good concept. It's one thing to know what it is that you like. It's another thing to know what your spouse likes. That's 2 different things, and it's helpful to know both because there are 2 sides, and we're going to talk about the both sides in a few minutes. So your question, why is it important to
have the right language when we're talking to someone? Because it might be a little confusing, right? If you don't understand one another. So how do you understand that your spouse is showing love to you?
It is important to know. I can tell you a real life example of languages that I experienced. So before we got married, I lived in Japan for a couple of years. And that was different. And it was good. But I had to learn a new language to communicate. And I remember in the beginning, as I tried to communicate, I would throw out words and phrases that I had memorized. And I had really no emotional connection to those words and phrases, and so they didn't really mean anything to me. I was just throwing out things that I had memorized, hoping that it was getting somewhere.
Hoping they would understand him.
Hoping that they would understand me.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I didn't really understand. Those words and phrases didn't really mean that much to me because I had no experience with them. But to the people, it did mean something. And I realized that as the more that I spoke their language, and I would see that those words and phrases had meaning to them, and I could see that they felt from what those words and phrases meant to them, when I experienced what they felt, then I began to gain that emotional connection myself to what those words and phrases meant. And so after, many months, then we could communicate a lot more effectively, because those words and phrases did mean something to me. And so it's important to be able to communicate in another person's language.
And so I think, like, being in Japan, to see how he was able to really connect with them better by understanding their language, that they felt like he cared more for them and was more concerned with them because he could communicate in their language. So we're talking about these 5 love languages, and how if our spouse learns what ours is, which mine is like gifts and words of affirmation, and I know his is like acts of service. He's really awesome at that. In fact, you know, for him, he likes to give gifts. Are you wanting to interrupt? Sorry.
No, keep going.
So he loves to like grow nuts on his nut trees, grow fruit on his fruit trees, and then he'll make those into yummy gifts. So he spends a lot of time not only showing this like act of service and preparing all that, but then now he actually has a gift too. So, you know, it's kind of cool.
So the difficult thing is, I was in Japan, and I was pretty fluent in English, I think, and I grew up with that, right? And that's my language. That's where I can communicate. And everybody in Japan speaking Japanese, and that was foreign to me. And so there was this barrier, this gap, and the communication was difficult. Sometimes we think, as couples, when we start to learn our languages, we think, well, this is my language and that's her language, and they're not compatible, they don't match. And so we think, what good did that do me to know that? Because now I just know the source of conflict, and there's nothing I can do about it. I believe that we are all multilingual. In fact, if you think back when you were dating, or if you're in that stage right now, you're dating, you're using all 5 love languages, and you haven't even thought about it. I remember when we were dating, I think back of the things that we were doing all 5. Think about that. If you approach someone and you speak English and German and French and Spanish and Chinese all at the same time, you're like, how is that going to work? That would be completely like just mess with your head, right? How can anything get through? But the thing about these love languages is that they're all run through the same interpreter. So it's different languages, but it's all through the interpretation of love. And so we, in our love languages, we're multilingual. And back in the times we were dating, were you not spending quality time with each other? Mm-hmm. Were you not giving and receiving gifts of all kinds? You were spending physical touch, words of affirmation. I mean, did you, while you're dating, you come up with the kindest ways to say everything, and so those words of affirmation are in there? And what's the other one? Acts of service. You do anything. you do anything for each other, right? And so, boy, you're just like using all 5 all the time. And then after we solidify the relationship, we get married, and we resort back to our core program, our core language, and then we start just focusing. That's the only thing we know now. Mm-hmm. But while we were dating, we were doing all 5, and things were great.
So where's my flowers? Where's my candy now? Let's see. Well, it is Valentine's Day today. But yes, we kind of forget all of those different ways to show love, right? But you know, I think there's 2 sides of the coin. So when you read this book, and if you've studied about the 5 love languages, people say, well, you need to learn your spouse's love language so you know how to show love in a way that they will understand and they will really feel loved. And I think that's important. I like it when he gives me gifts. and he likes it when I'm able to give him service, right?
So yeah, she's mentioned the other side of the coin. So she loves the gifts, but when I go to try to buy a gift, that's not my language. I'm not very good. I'm not fluent in the language of gifts because I just don't have that same emotional connection to it. And so I really struggle with that. And to me, it doesn't feel real. It's like when I was first speaking Japanese, I would throw out these words and phrases, and it just didn't feel real to me. I wasn't emotionally connected to that. And so when I go to think about giving gifts, It's like it feels fake. It feels like this isn't right. How can I show love in that way? That's the other side of the coin. How do I show love to her in her language and yet have it mean something to me as well? So back to my experience in Japan, learning the language, I learned that by continuous practice in that language, that I did develop that emotional connection to it. And then it did mean something to me. And so you can, even though it's not your primary, most fluent language, you can express love to your spouse in the way that means most to her, him, if that's both ways. So it's by continuous practice of that you will develop the emotional connection to it. You can get more fluent in that language. So practice.
Yeah, so awesome. So develop it. Learn what your spouse's love language is. Work on that till it does feel more comfortable, more true rather than fake. Then the other side of the coin, though, is...
We've got more sides of the coin here.
There's 3 sides of the coin. Anyway, like, we're so imperfect, right? So even though we might know our spouse's love language, which if you know yours, put it down below, either receiving gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, or physical touch. Put yours and what you think your spouse's love language is. But we need to be gentle on one another. So realize that he knows gifts and words of affirmation are more what I prefer and I could relate to. But if he comes in and does the dishes, gives me an act of service, some time, which time is so valuable, right? Just valuable as the flowers and the chocolate. I love and appreciate that. And I've learned to love and appreciate it even more. So, cut your spouse a little slack if they show love in a way that you know is more how it feels right to them, but isn't exactly the way you like it. Boy, appreciate it, you guys, because it's still coming from their heart. They still are really trying to show their love in a way that they know best. But back to the other side of the coin, as you learn, which they will, feel more loved by, then it's also good to practice doing that for them too.
Yeah, I think gratitude is huge, and so like she was saying, don't expect your spouse to always express their love in your language, because it's hard maybe to express it in your language. And so if you show gratitude and appreciation for their attempts, that's actually going to encourage them. I've experienced this. When I show it in my language to her and it doesn't mean that much, but she is appreciative anyway, that makes me want to try harder to express it in her language. And, back to my experience in Japan, same thing. As I struggled to come up with the right words because I wasn't familiar with a whole lot of them, the people I would talk to were so kind and appreciative of my effort to speak in their language. And if I ever got stuck, they'd say, "Go ahead, do it in English and I'll look it up. I've got a dictionary." And so do that with your spouse. If they're struggling and they're doing their best, and just assume that we're doing our best. If we're going to make assumptions, why don't we just assume that we're all doing our best to speak love in the language that we know best and that you understand best. And so pull out your dictionary if you have to. Accept their words in their language or their communications of love in their language, and you can interpret it. You know that they're trying.
So guys, thanks for joining us today. I want you to remember to comment below talking about the 5 love languages here, whether you think your love language is receiving gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, or physical touch. Put what you think you are, and what you think your spouse is below, so we can have some conversation about this. But we have a cause, you guys. Wouldn't you agree that marriage and that relationship, that sacred relationship, is really under attack nowadays? There's so many negative influences on marriage and the family unit itself. And my husband is actually privileged to support some of these young men and also husbands struggling with pornography addiction through his mentoring that he offers. So like that's a big one right now, that big plague, and how that impacts the marriage relationship. And when we see these young men struggling with that, thinking, wow, they're going to be going into their marriages and their relationships, it's really important that we are working hard to be marriage makers and not breakers, and do all we can in our power to strengthen our own marriage and to strengthen our family and friends and neighbors. And so we would ask you guys, please share this video with your friends and family that can benefit from this. And we have that awesome Valentine gift. It's 3 keys that you need for a more sensational, happy marriage. Trying to remember the words. I worked hard on this gift for you guys. So 3 keys that you need for a sensational, happy marriage. Please take our gift, share this video and the link with friends and family. Gosh, we just wish you guys a super fantastic Valentine's
Before we
Day.
end,
Before we end, sure.
Before we end, I just remembering, and remembering is really a key as you're trying to understand love languages. Don't forget. I mean, remembering is an important part of our relationships. Remembering the good things, and this morning, one of the first things that I was remembering, and when that thought came to me, I spent a few minutes focused on remembering more of the details of that. 32 years ago today, we officially got engaged. And that was a great thing for me to remember. And it's funny, we have Valentine's Day every single year. But I don't always remember this day as the day that we got engaged. But this morning I did. I remembered that we got engaged officially on this day 32 years ago. And I thought about what we did that day. We didn't live in Logan at the time, but we were over here buying rings on that day. And that experience, it brought up the joy, it brought up the feelings, and I smiled and I laughed a little, and it brought all that back. So a key part of building a relationship is remembering those things that meant something. We have so many challenges and obstacles in life that just, continually just press down on us that we often forget those things that matter most. Please celebrate today, and while you're also trying to maybe discover new communications with love, remember those great things that are a part of your relationship, and celebrate those as well. So I'm done.
So I love you.
I love you.
And I love you guys. Have a happy Valentine's Day. Bye.
See ya.